Hi guys, Susan Thomas here, and today I'm going to teach you how to make crazy bangles. I want to teach you how to make crazy bangles. They're lots of fun and it's really easy. This is a no solder project, so you don't have to worry about soldering anything. We're going to use crimp beads, but let me go through everything we need so you can get started. You're going to need some tools and supplies, so let's get ready with a crimping plier. It needs to be kind of a special crimping plier. Has to have a large enough opening on the crimp, or a groove, I guess I should say, on the crimping plier so that you can fit a large crimp bead. I have here an Omtara crimper. There's also a Mighty crimper out there that you can use a couple different tools. This one's great. Also, you're gonna want a really good flush cutter. So you can cut 12 gauge and 14 gauge wire. Then I like to have a ruler. I'm going to teach you guys how to measure your bangles and make them different sizes, as well as show you how to make crazy bangles. You will need a permanent marker and either 12 gauge or 14 gauge wire to make the bangles, and some 26 gauge wire if you're going to actually decorate your bangles. Then of course we're going to need these little crimp beads. These are special crimp beads for large gauge wire. Finally, I'm gonna show you how to decorate your crazy bangles so they look fun and even crazier. So you're gonna need some nugget beads. Definitely wanna do some nuggets because they've got nice flat edges on them and they have big enough holes to fit my 24 gauge wire. I think that's about everything. So we're ready to get started. So we're gonna get started with some 14 gauge wire. Now, when you're doing, I'm using 14 gauge. I will tell you, you can use 14 or 12 gauge wire to do this, but the 12 gauge is almost a little bit more of an advanced project because it's a little harder to get the crimp bead to adhere to the wire. The 14 gauge is easy. So if you're just getting started, start with the 14 gauge. What I'm gonna do first is I'm going to measure out 8 1/4 inches of my 14 gauge wire. Now you're wondering why 8 1/4 inches? The reason is because that is a medium-sized bangle. And I have a medium-sized wrist, medium-sized hand, so I make myself medium-sized bangles. But if you want to make them larger or smaller, all you have to do, very simply, is subtract or add a 1/4 inch. So an 8-inch bangle would be a small, and an 8 1/2 inch bangle would be a large. And you go down from there and up from there. And it makes it really easy to measure. So let me just cut this piece at 8 1/4 inches, so these will fit me. And I'm just going to trim that just like so. And now you want to make sure you flush cut each end with your flush cutter, and then you're going to shape your bangle. Now, do not use any tools to do this because the crazier, the better. Let me show you one. This is one I've already done, and you can see that I have not taken any time or trouble to make this perfect. So I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna shape it with my fingers and my hands. This is also easier to do. Look, I'm already getting too perfect. This is also easier to do with 14 gauge wire than it is with your 12 gauge wire. Your 12 gauge wire, you might need some tools to do some of this with to kind of get it into shape. But the 14 gauge, you can see I'm just doing it with my fingers. You could even kind of bend it up and down a little bit and really just kind of get it just nutty. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use a crimp bead to put this all together. This is a crimp bead. It looks like a tube. It's just going to fit right on there. But before you get started, it's very important that you mark your wire. Otherwise, you won't be able to see where you're crimping. So I'm going to use this permanent marker and just mark my wire right there on one side, on the inside, so that I can see how far I've put this crimp tube on here. Because you can see once you put it on, you can't see the wire anymore, and I have no idea how much wire's in there. And believe me, I've messed these up many times, not realizing how far I put my crimp bead on. So go like that. I'm gonna put this down for a second and get ready with my crimping plier. So this is an Omtara crimper, and you can see it has 2 grooves in it. Back groove right there is the larger of the 2 grooves, so that's the one I'm gonna use, that little divot you see. And that little tooth is gonna bite into the crimp bead, and it's gonna make it stay on my wire so that my bangle holds together. First step is just to put that into the crimping plier. It seems counterintuitive to do it that way. You'd think, oh, put it on the wire first, but it's a lot easier if you just put it in your crimping plier and then put it onto the wire. So just go right up to that mark you made, and what I'm gonna do is just give this a squeeze, a really good squeeze, to make sure that that is going to stay on my wire. And then I'm gonna put the other side in to my crimp tube. And you might have to move things around just a little bit to get that to happen, like so, and then drop that into Same groove, make sure you're at the end of the crimping tube and give it a good squeeze, just like that. Now you're gonna give it a tug test, make sure that it's nice and tight, and this one is. So that one's ready to go, ready to add to my stack of bangles. And they're crazy, see? Pretty fun. Now, crazy bangles can get even crazier. These are crazy bangles that I've embellished with nuggets, which is a lot of fun and really talk about taking up real estate on your arm. This is just 5 of these, and just look how much space that's gonna take up. So they look really cool and really crazy. You can make them as crazy as you want. I usually use nuggets because they sit nice and flat up against my bangles and don't sit up too far. Using round beads to do this doesn't really work, but you can try other shapes as well. So I was gonna try to make one to blend in with this set, and I have 3 choices here. I've got some iolite, I have some green quartz, and I have some lavender amethyst. And I'm thinking I'm just gonna kind of stay in this kind of springy green color zone, so I'm gonna go with the green quartz. Cool, good, glad you like it. And I'm gonna use this silver one that I already made. The reason I wanna use this one is because sometimes when I do this, especially when I use 12 gauge, I get a little crazy with that crimp tube. And this one, I just to get it tight, I really kind of mangled it a little bit. So I like to cover them. I don't want you to see that. So that's kind of why I started decorating the crazy bangles. So 24 gauge wire, it's best if you pull enough wire to actually wrap the whole bangle so you don't have to add any. You can add it as you go. I'm gonna pull myself right at about 2.5 feet. I think that'll be enough, but usually I would pull a little bit more than that. Usually I'd pull like 4, but then it'll have wire all over the place. So I may have to add wire at some point. Then you'll get to learn how to do it. So I'm just gonna pull about 2.5 feet of 24 gauge wire and just kind of straighten that out with your fingers. It doesn't have to be straight. I'm just kind of pulling on it just so it's not tangled. And then I'm gonna take my bangle and I'm gonna start wrapping my wire. Now, just give yourself a little tail of wire, something to hold on to so that you don't have to, it's really hard to try to take this little tippy end right there and wrap it around. So what you wanna do is just give yourself a tail or a handle, hold on right here, and then start wrapping right up next to that crimp tube. So I'm gonna do 3 wraps, just kind of loose wraps, and then I'm gonna wrap tightly 2 times right next to the crimp tube and pull my wire out. And then I'm gonna take one of those green nuggets, and you see I'm feeling them. I'm feeling for one that has a nice flat bottom on it that'll fit right up against that crimp tube. Oh, this one's perfect. It's flat on both sides. And also I'm wanting one that's long enough to cover the crimp tube. The rest of the ones don't matter, but that one matters. So then you're just gonna take your wire and just give yourself a little bit of a bend in the wire. See how I kind of pushed up against that? And then press the bead right down on top of the crimp tube. Then you're gonna bring the wire straight down on the other side and go on the opposite side of the bangle. So one wire's coming up this side, one wire's coming up the bottom side. And then pull tight and wrap 2 times around the wire. And then you're gonna wanna go underneath the bead to secure it. So here you can see one that I've already done, where you can see I've kind of wrapped the wire underneath the bead just to kind of make it a little sturdier on the bracelet. And you don't have to be really neat. Remember, these are crazy bangles. You can be crazy with it, okay? Nobody's really gonna notice that part anyway, but it's going to hold your bangle together better. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my wire. Now you can see why I needed extra wire, and I can already tell 2.5 feet is not gonna be enough. So wrap, and I usually do 4 or 5 wraps because that really makes it sturdy. And I'm tightly wrapping around this, just like so. And I'm being a little bit perfect about it, but you don't have to. It's just because I'm looking at it right now, and usually I don't pay a lot of attention to this step. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create some space between my next 2 beads. So I'm gonna wrap 5 times, but not close together. I'm gonna give myself about 1/8 of an inch between each wrap. Now, once again, doesn't have to be perfect. And so now I am ready to put on my next bead. See, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little coils there, and I'm ready for my next bead. So grab another one. This one feels good. I'm just gonna pop that onto the 24 gauge wire, just like so, and then pull it up to my bangle. Press it in place. See how I made that almost that little seat for it on one side, and then pull it down on the other side. So you really have a seat on both sides of your stone, and then wrap it around nice and tight 2 times, and then do your wraps around underneath the nugget. And from now on, everything is just repetitive. So let's go. I will tell you, there is no measurement and no rhyme or reason to how far apart I'm putting these beads. They're crazy. It's crazy bangles. So just kind of where you feel it. I mean, I'm doing 5 wraps between, but I'm not measuring anything. You can see I'm gonna have to add some wire. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap around right here, and I'm gonna finish this off underneath on the side. Just trim that off and make sure. I like this crimper because it has a little end on it that you can use kind of like a chain nose plier and press that in to your wire, like so. You can also end up underneath the bead. I'm gonna start underneath the bead though, so I decided to end there. So now I'm gonna take another couple feet of wire. We got 4 on there. I'm gonna do about, I usually do 7, so I'm gonna go with the same distance, 2.5 feet. So I'm gonna give myself a handle again. And this time I'm gonna wrap around my bead a couple times to get started. And then I'm gonna start my wraps here, couple wraps just to get out of the way. And I'm going to take this wire and wrap it around the bead and cut it off on the side, and then press that into my wraps. Just kind of hide it. Basically what I'm doing is hiding it underneath the bead. And I'm gonna use this like a chain nose plier again, just to tuck that in up and underneath all those other wraps. So I'm gonna have to get in here just for a second and tuck that in. There we go. Tuck it right into those wraps. Just because you want to run your finger over it and make sure you don't feel it. And that should kind of hide inside all those other wraps. And then we're just gonna keep going. Every once in a while, you're gonna want to pull that wire like this to straighten it out. Otherwise, you'll get kinks. All right, 3. This one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this off underneath like I did before. So you can see you could use 5 feet of wire to start with to make this whole bangle, but it's a lot of wire to deal with, so it's not a terrible idea just to add some new wire at some point during your project. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this I will finish off by wrapping around this bead and tucking that wire in up underneath those 24 gauge. And you can kind of press it with your chain nose, or you can squeeze in with your chain nose, whichever works the best for you. You just want to tuck it up underneath there. Once you get it in, you won't be able to get it back out. And there we go. That is a crazy bangle to add to my crazy set. Okay, so don't forget to do this project. You're gonna need a few tools and supplies. You will need a crimping plier, either a mighty crimper or an Omtara crimper with a larger space in it to crimp the larger crimp tubes. You're also gonna need a good flush cutter because we're cutting heavy gauge wire, like 14 and 12 gauge wire. So make sure you have that. We will want some sort of a ruler or a measuring device so you can measure out your bangles and make them the right size. And you'll also need a permanent marker. I'm using nuggets to decorate my bangles today, so that's a great choice. Gemstone nuggets, they work great for this project. And then as far as wire is concerned, either 12 or 14 gauge wire, some 24 gauge wire to wrap them, and then the appropriate size crimp tube to finish off your bangle. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys would like to pick up some supplies like the ones I work with today, check out the links down below. Have you ever accidentally made something that you ended up loving, like crazy bangles? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell, and we'll see you again next time.